Mm. Hello, I'm Pastor Lydia, and we are Hope in Life Talks. We are hosting today Angela Wilson. Angela will be talking today about the crisis. So, welcome, and this is our number 106 podcast. Welcome our co-host, Scott Kiddle. So, Angela, could you please introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Angela Wilson and I'm from Melbourne, Australia. It's nice and early in the morning over here on a Sunday. And I'm a career coach and I'm the founder of Career Design Studio. And I've recently published a book called Career Crisis for those who are experiencing unexpected change. And there's been lots of unexpected change in the world recently and over the past couple of years. And I really find that this book is a proactive guide to transformation where people can really uncover the next chapter of their life after change and really discover the meaning and purpose, especially after what they've been through. So that was quite a journey to get that book out there, and it's out there in the world. And I really find that people are needing something like this at the moment. The more people that I coach and speak to, change is a big topic at the moment. So that's a little bit about me. Is there anything else that you'd like to know?
I think we're having some technical challenges.
Yeah, I think Lydia might be on mute as well.
So we are talking today about something that many of us, as I said, going through. And I know that you, Angela, work specifically also with women. So today we invited lots of women to our talk, but crisis does not avoid a man. And so is it possible that you start first with the general issues that we people face and go through, but after that, maybe even focus a little more on what are the specifics of women when it comes to their lives, their careers, their families?
When I think about a crisis, so we've got the topic today about mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual crisis. Especially after change, I can find that a lot of people do come to an ending in their life, and especially if it's quite sudden, unexpected, that middle bit can get quite messy, and the chaos of change can really stir things up, whether it's external or whether it's also internal. And it's about having the right coping strategies and the tools and a sense of self to get you through that messy middle bit to move into that new beginning and really move on with your life. So what I do find when I work with anyone who's been through that unexpected change, it's about reevaluating, reassessing who you are, because change can bring about so much within that sometimes we're not sure where to start. A lot of people come to me and they're very overwhelmed. They're not really clear about what they need to do to move through this, and they feel like their whole life is in a big mess. And yes, it can be women and it can be men, and just having that person to talk through that with can be a really great beginning point for the unraveling of what's going on in their mind, because a lot of this transition is that internal process. And who are you now after this change? And what has that for your confidence and even the plans for the future? When sudden change happens, it can really alter what you thought maybe 2 seconds before, a week before, a year before, about, well, where am I headed now that I've been through this and life looks a lot different, and who am I through this change? So that really, I hope, answers that first bit about where people find themselves in that lost and stuck feeling and not knowing what to do with those feelings, because maybe they just haven't been taught the strategies to move through that, or they do have the strategies, they've just really forgotten that because they've been so focused on the change that's happened in their life.
Angela, you raise a big question, you really do, about who am I? Who was I then? Who am I now? And it speaks to the concept of identity, and it seems to me there's several levels to that: emotionally, socially, career-wise, spiritually. How do you take on a question that big?
And it is a big question about, well, who am I now? So I like to begin with the person and understanding, who were you before, and what was the lead up to your change, and what happened to you in that moment, and what has changed since then. So really unpacking and understanding the person. And so that involves a lot of listening, because sometimes just giving them the space to talk about that moment in a very safe environment where I'm not going to turn it around and talk about myself. It's about letting them get their I guess their answers that are within them out as well, because as they talk and make sense of what they've been through, certain things start to connect for them, where they go, oh yes, that's who I used to be, and now I'm a bit more like this. And what I once thought was okay, whether it be whatever in their career or in their relationships or in their emotional states, that it can be, well, what's okay now for me? What fits well? And it also comes down to identifying their values at the moment, because that can sometimes shift a little bit. So what's your priority now? Now that you've been through what you've been through, what's really important to you? And moving forward, what do you want to bring with you as well? Because we all have experiences, life events, skills, strengths from the past, and what's important for you to be using now. And so it's a really great time to explore and understand the person that you once were, and who are you now, and what is it that interests you as well, because lots of different areas can change as we all evolve. We go through little moments of this as well, where you might be doing one thing and go, that doesn't feel right anymore. So what does feel right? And having that conversation, even if it is that unknown, and if there can be lots of I don't knows that come out, and that's okay, that it's about exploring for those clues now.
Do you differentiate between doing and being?
Doing and being. That's a really
like in terms of
interesting
identity. Is my identity, okay, I'm an IT tech, that's my identity, right? Well, is that all that is to your identity because you do these things every day?
And that does come up a lot, especially if people are looking at changing industries or careers, that they might have only known themselves as the teacher, the IT tech, the whatever career they're coming from, and to possibly shift that. So I've been speaking to lots of people that might have been retrenched lately, or their contracts haven't been renewed. Maybe they were fired because of everything that happened through the pandemic. And, well, who am I now? I'm waking up and I don't have that sense of identity that I was so tied to. Yet I often have to go to the person that, well, who are you? as you mentioned, doing and being. So who are you deep within? What are your values, your strengths, your interests? What lights you up? What gives you that sense of engagement? And it doesn't have to be connected to work. It doesn't have to be connected even to a relationship, because sometimes we identify ourselves as someone's wife or partner or mother, and that's not all who you are. So I really enjoy opening up people's minds to different identities that they do have and bringing them back to the core of really who they are.
That is very good answer, and that's a good question, Scott. Thank you. Angela, I have a question. You introduced yourself very shortly and very modestly. And but when we but when we started, since it's such a good topic and sudden change, how did it happen to you, if I may ask, that you suddenly got interested in that topic? Because what you wrote to me, and I hope it's okay if I read that, after a freak windstorm roared through my quiet suburb and ripped a gigantic gum tree from its roots, crushing my home, cars, plans for the future, and my heart. So unexpected, and it was kind of like a bouquet. Now, bouquet is not a good word, but I would say bouquet is a nice word. But something like a tornado hit your life. Am I right? So,
Yeah.
how personally you relate to this issue that now, when people have a crisis, you run and help them to clean their lives? Is it correct way to say that?
Yeah, for me, a tornado was a great way to explain it, and we don't get many in Australia. And where I live, yes, it's a very, it is on the mountains, and it does have very big gum trees and lots of them. And we chose the area for the nature and the beauty of it. And not once had I even thought about windstorms or danger in my area. It was more to do with maybe bushfires. That was the only concerns that we had. And it was a really quiet Sunday. It's a bit like this morning at my house, that you can just hear the nature around you, the birds chirping, the quietness. And then all of a sudden the wind started swirling and howling, and that was very unusual for our area during the day. Often you get it at nighttime and you go to sleep and everything's okay. So for it to happen during the day, it really brought our attention to what's happening. And stepping outside, I mean, the gum trees are 20 meters tall. I was looking up to gum trees that were thrashing about, and they looked like rag dolls, where their branches were just moving about, and they were actually snapping off and landing on the ground. There was leaves everywhere. And meters from our house, there'd already been a couple of trees uprooted and fallen, and they were all silent. And that was one of the scariest parts about it, that we didn't even notice that a couple of trees had already fallen on our property. And as we were outside, we watched a tree uproot and fall next door on our neighbour's chicken shed, which made us go into that alert of, wow, this is bigger than what we thought. And we could feel that the wind was coming from a different direction. And it had that sense within us to go, this is much bigger than we had even expected. Let's talk about, do we stay or do we go? And as we were deciding that, we were in our lounge room, and my husband and I and my sister, who happened to be there at the same time with their children, we felt like there was that sense of urgency to make that decision. And out of the corner of our eye, we saw a dark shadow, and all of the adults just instinctively knew to get out, and we grabbed children close to us and we ran outside. We felt movement on the floor, and as we got outside safely on the grass, we watched the tree finally coming down, a big 20-meter gum tree, crushing all of the bedrooms and bursting through that lounge room that we were standing in. the children were hysterical. The adults were in disbelief. And I can just remember standing there. I had a crying child on my hip and two others latched to me. I could feel their fingernails digging into me. And I came back to the moment. I can remember the beating of my heart and taking deep breaths and knowing that this moment in my life had changed everything in that instant. It was a very surreal moment, yet I was so connected to myself. I was very aware that I had to be an adult in this situation and take care of my children, my family, and that we had possibly lost everything in our home. It actually landed on all three cars as well that were there. We were trapped and the wind was just getting worse outside. So when I think about the change in my life, it was that freak windstorm that really crushed the homes. It landed on all the bedrooms. Thankfully, we weren't sleeping, or that would have been a very different story. And I knew life was very precious from then on. And I held my family very close to me for the next 3 years while we went through the process. There was a very big process we went through, and my life went on hold for 3 years while we went through that.
It's funny how, yes, it's very, I wanted to say how funny. But what I mean by that is that, when you wake up one morning and the whole thing is at peace and the world is in a good place and you are loved and you do not expect anything. And suddenly this storm and the swirl and everything flying away and your whole life is crashing right in front of your eyes. So, and that's why today we have this Coping Life Talk with Angela to talk about how we people go through these disasters. And looking at you, you handled it really well. You are content, you are looking great and looking youthful, but oh my, your story is a story of horror. It gives me goosebumps. And when I wanted to complain this morning, like, oh no, how could we have this Angela's podcast today when everything just falling apart? And the way we started today, if people, now I see that many people follow us, but in the beginning it was kind of a clumsy beginning, clumsy start. Why? Because of these unexpected changes. Things did not end when we planned on them to end. The internet was slow, right? And it seems so minor comparing with what we just heard. But so the mess of life happens, and it will happen. And so tell me, when it happens to you once and you got out, do you think that it's like, whew, thank God, it will never happen to me again? Is it true, or these things will repeat? That's what I want our audience to understand, that if they had something like this, they went through and cleaned up, that is it like now over, or they need to be ready and not disappointed when it happens again?
I think that when you go through a natural disaster, excuse me, any changes in the environment get you back into that alert system. And that for me, it took a good while to be able to, and same with my children, I noticed the same thing, and with my sister and their children, to be around wind again without it connecting to that fight and flight response. It took a while for that to be able to settle and calm down within you, because of what you've been through. You have those triggers. And so it was about learning to be at peace with the nature again, and that the wind doesn't mean that it's going to uproot another tree and crush your home, that it's okay for it to be windy. And there were nights where I had to console the children and just let them know it's okay, we're safe. We had to move off the property for a year and live in a different area while we were going through an insurance battle, and that we had to say there's no trees around, it's okay. And the more that we just let everyone know that it is okay, that it doesn't always happen. That was a very freak incident, that it has calmed. And the other day, so it's 2016 when that happened, and there was even wind the other day, and automatically I noticed the wind. I just check what direction is it coming from, but it didn't create that same fight or flight response that it had previously. So I find that you can move on from those moments. It takes strategies, it takes calming techniques, yet you can get there. And just know that if you were to live in that fear that whole time, your life, it would be very hard to move on. And just be able to accept that it is nature, and that we do live in a beautiful area that has those that has sometimes natural disasters. So you can move on. It is a process, and you need to have the right support around you through that, to let you know that it is okay and it is safe to be in nature, because it is so beautiful.
And also that reminds me that we need to tell our audience that you live in Australia.
Yes.
And that's fascinating, even to have you live with us today. Imagine how many time zones we crossed today. No wonder we had so many issues with technology. And but I appreciate our audience that sticks to that and continues watching. Plus, I want to tell you that briefly, that when the podcast is over, it's available on YouTube, on Twitter, on Tumblr, on LinkedIn, and on Facebook. So you can continue coming back and repeat what you maybe missed today. But I will briefly go through the 4 items that you plan to talk today about. First of all, like what we have on the screen: understand the mess you are in. So you already talked about your kind of a natural disaster, right? And how it affected you. But so the next one will be gain a new perspective of your crisis. And then look. Go
That's
ahead.
okay. I was just wondering, with the understanding your mess you're in, can I unpack that a little bit more? Is that
Yes,
okay?
absolutely.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say what else people can, who view us, that they
Sure.
can wait for something that resonates with them. Yes, of course, understand the mess you're in, you will be covering right now. And then how to gain a new perspective on your crisis. Looking into your support system will be next. And then the last one will be get creative. I'm looking forward for that, like how to get creative in the middle of a mess. Okay, so understand the mess you're in, please, and unwrap it.
And we've touched a little bit about understand the mess you're in. It's about understanding your situation. So what was life like before this mess and this change, and who are you now? So really getting to know that understanding the mess. I like to talk with people in coaching, but also giving them the chance to do their own journaling, to do their own writing about this, to let what is in the mind and in that dark part to come out into the light. A lot of people sometimes feel that they might not be able to talk to too many people about it. And so what safe place can you create to be able to really understand what you're going through? Some people find writing really hard. So maybe even talking into, there's so many apps these days that can translate and write down what you're saying. Speaking with a coach about what you've been through, or if there is still pain, someone professional, so a psychologist or counselor, so that you can work through all those processes that we go through. So understanding through unpacking your story, as well as getting to know yourself. So your situation is the change that you went through, and the transition, and maybe this mess is really internal. And I like to take stock in this moment and check in with yourself. I even did this before. This is my Sunday morning ritual, to check in with all the different areas of my life. So my love, the play in my life as well, how my career is going, and my wellness. So mental, physical, emotional, spiritual. And just taking 5 minutes to go, where am I with all of these areas? in the beginning, when I work with clients, these numbers can be quite confronting, yet there's also highlights in that moment where you go, oh, maybe my life isn't as bad as I'm thinking, or what's going on in my mind. If I write it down and rate them from 0 to 10, so 0 not being so good, 10 being amazing, where do you sit with all of those different areas? And you can get that visual of, okay, well, my career's going not so bad, my relationships are amazing, and maybe it is just my physical part of me. Maybe I do need to get up and go for that walk in the morning to start my day, to make things feel a little bit better. So finding the low numbers and going, where can be my starting point? Because to sometimes be in overwhelm, it's really hard to pick just that one thing that you can do every day for a week to see how can I feel a bit better with myself. So understanding yourself, your situation, can give you, already be giving you, and moving into that second stage of that new perspective. And if I do move on, unless you've got any questions about that.
Yeah, so are you ready to go to the next one?
Yeah, unless you have any questions.
Yes, absolutely. So understand. But I remember also in the beginning, you said when you are in crisis, when everything is just flying away and it's such a mess. So what is important, and you forget who you are, right? Scott had that question too. So then you suggest that you advised to go, first of all, to remember who you are. So to understand the mess you are in, is it on this stage that you need to remember who you are, or this is later? So understanding the mess you're in, does it involve you as a person and who you are, or not yet?
You begin to unpack that through the story. Sometimes the story about the situation leads to how you are feeling or what's going on inside. So understanding who you are is a thread throughout this process. And I often find that once you begin pouring things out, that you connect with who you are now. It can happen along the way. And when I check in with people, when we have our coaching conversations, it usually is about the person as well. So they go on that self-discovery through the writing, taking stock, and it's always connected back to the person and having those aha moments pulled out, because sometimes we can forget or we move through things quite quickly. And I often have to grab those little parts that I find that are those little clues. And as well, you'll be collecting them along the way. So yeah, it does come out. Some people find that it comes out through all different types of processes, and you have to collect those little nuggets, those little gold moments along the way, because it might not just happen in this first stage. It might be a part of the process throughout.
But what is important, I hear, is that to remember, kind of to have the solid ground under your feet through remembering who you are, right? The question later I will have, what if you don't know who you are? That's another issue. But you know, like, and especially like, how do I remind myself that I need to remember in this mess who I am? I don't remember anything when everything is flying around me, right? So let me also, before we continue, and we continue with Scott's question, I will introduce to you our another co-host, Candy Sheehan. Hello, Candy. Hi.
Hi, Candy.
Hello.
It's so good to see you.
Well, I'm so glad to be here, and I didn't want to miss this broadcast. I'm sorry that I didn't get here on time. I apologize.
Wonderful. I'm glad you're here, because we're exactly talking about the messes we are in, and you bring some sanity right away. So, and Angela, Candy Sheehan is one of our co-authors and the co-founders of this podcast, and she's a faithful co-host for 2 years now. And that's why we have number 106 podcast. So welcome, Candy. And let's continue. So we just covered how to understand the importance of understanding the mess you are in. So Scott had a question.
I just wanted to make the observation. You've mentioned the word process a number of times, and it seems to me that's a good reminder that maybe in one session, you, Angela, are not going to sort everything out for a person who comes to you, and that it really is a process, and it could take quite a bit of time to unpack what you've experienced, what your values were then. Are the values still the same? Am I still the person that I was before?
Yeah.
What do I need to jettison from my life? What do I need to cling to? Getting a grasp of everything that happened to you and what that means and how has that changed my life. That is a process, and it seems like we have to be patient with that process.
Definitely. I think patience is one of the biggest things, and something that I had to learn along the way, that patience, and I have even been telling my younger daughter at the moment, patience is something that we all have to, especially in this world at the moment where everything is so quick and life seems a bit demanding, that patience is one of those things that I really had to cultivate, and there was also a sense of hope as well connected with that just knowing that there is a process, and that to also hope that everything is going to work out exactly how it's meant to. So yes, the process, I often have to say that to the people that I work with, that we only have a short amount of time today together, yet by the next time we speak, I'm going to be amazed at the amount of things that you've uncovered just by being that proactive person and beginning to take steps forward, because sometimes we can be in that mess and we can feel like our feet are really stuck in quicksand or in that mud. Sometimes people call it like sticky honey, that how can I get myself out of this? And just by taking little steps forward, by understanding who you are, doing something small every day towards the person that you are becoming. So it might not be clear in this first bit, and we've just been speaking about, well, who are you? How can you find that out? Sometimes that unravels itself through the different activities that you do, which is that movement forward. And that's a big part of unraveling that mess, is to feel like you're proactive and actually doing something about it, because we can spend a lot of time thinking about it. Oh, my life's in a mess. I don't know where to begin. And as soon as we begin to change that perspective and clear out some of the thought processes and the things that are bogging you down, when I even just have that one conversation with people, they go, oh, I'm feeling so much better, and they get a direction, they get a clearer mind to move forward with whatever that focus is for the week, or until the next time I speak to them.
Yeah, that's definitely helps. So the process. Okay, so we talked understanding the mess. First of all, we are in, and everybody who is watching us today knows what it is, right, Candy? The mess, and the Scott and myself.
Yes.
But so the next point is that we wanted to hear from you today is gain a new perspective of your crisis. So how do you do that? How do you gain a new perspective?
The first step really begins that. It can really shift you from what has happened to you to, okay, well, this is where I am now. This is what my life is looking like now. And when we want to gain that new perspective, it can begin by looking into your values. Well, what are my values now? Personally, professionally? What are my strengths that I'm pulling upon that I can utilize every day? Because when we work to our strengths as well, it gives us that sense of satisfaction and engagement and confidence that whatever you're doing, whether it is focusing on your career or just getting through every day And focusing on that thriving part of you can really change that perspective. When I work with people, there's lots of things that they would be complaining about. And we put that into a don't list about, well, what is it that you're complaining about? And if it is that you're wanting to move into a new industry or look at even what you're doing at the moment, what are the don't list? And then let's create a want list from that. So reframing things and what is it that you want to focus on? So just by flipping things and reframing things and catching little moments where they might be talking about something, and is that a limiting belief? Is that true? Do you really believe that? So looking and pulling apart, this can be a very rewarding part, but it can also be a very challenging part for some people to actually listen to the things that they say to themselves or the story that they tell, and having someone pull them up and say, is that really true? Has that happened all of your life? And would you like to do something different about that as well? Sometimes people also have lots of fear coming up, and that can really hold people back from getting that new perspective, because change, they've already been through quite a big change, that the fear of changing anything else or stepping outside of their comfort zone can really put people into that freeze where they go, I just don't want to change anymore. I've already had a big change and the rest of that seems a bit scary. It might mean for people to strengthen that inner coach, that part of them that knows best, that can guide them in those moments, because you're not always going to have people around you. It's usually possibly when you're going to sleep at night that you might hear certain things go on in your mind. And how can you calm that part of you that might be fearful of moving forward or procrastinating, or maybe feeling like life will never be the same again? Or so there's lots of different things that can be holding people back. And it's about having the new perspective of, well, what do I want in my life now? What do I want to bring forward with me into this new chapter? And really cleaning that slate so that you can feel refreshed and renewed, and that all that heavy baggage from the past doesn't have to come with you. What parts do you choose to move forward with?
What I want to ask you a question, since we talk about a new perspective, then you mentioned the word and used several times reframing. Reframe situation, reframe your view, and then you mentioned fear also. But I would like to help our audience understand, first of all, what is reframing in when we are dealing with crisis, but also how to do that. What is that process that Scott also asked a question, the process of reframing?
So when I think of people in a crisis, they might be feeling like you're never going to get out of it, for instance, that, I'm going to be stuck in this pain, in this. And for me, we were going through so many things at one time that, I'm never going to have peace in my life again. When are we going to be able to just feel normal? And so when we are hearing those words that we're saying, and we usually say them out loud or in our mind, just having a notepad beside you and writing them down. It can be just a couple of words or the sentence that you're saying, and just catching yourself out and challenging yourself and looking at those words that you've just said. Is that true? Or if it's something about my life will never be the same again, challenging yourself, is that really true? And reframing it is as simple as putting it into a positive sentence. So if my life,
so will it be fair to say, for example, that statement that now people often use, like instead of saying I have a problem, say I have an opportunity?
Love it.
So it's a different
already,
way.
yes.
Yeah, so that turning things upside down, and
Yes.
but it also, I feel like it trains your brain. It trains your inner being into looking at things differently. So now I actually remind myself every time, like, oh my gosh, I have a problem. Then I thought, wait a second, don't use that word. So is it true that even using a different word is a part of reframing?
For sure. And as soon as you said, I have an opportunity, I felt something within me just stand up a little bit taller
Energy,
and
yeah.
hold myself going,
Yeah.
yes, that's the key, that the feeling, and you even put your hand on your head and you said, I have a problem. So you're going inward and down. And as soon as you said, I have an opportunity, you opened back up to the
Open
world.
up. Okay.
So I could even feel that as you said that. So it's so powerful to be able to, and it's I always say process. It is a skill to learn, to be able to catch yourself and to not down, or to not beat yourself up for feeling that or for saying that is it is a genuine thought. So as long as you know that you can flip it around and look at what you can do for your energy and your posture and your outlook, you're opening back up to the world instead of falling back in.
Yeah, and I wanted to just add to that. That was amazing to me. I'm right there with you. When you reframed that, Lydia, I just felt like, oh yeah, I can do this. It just her saying it. I was shocked. It impacted me. It's amazing to me. And the other thing I love about this, two things I've got, and I came late to the party, but just the fact that you said you don't have to change everything in one day. Take a little step. And so when I'm really feeling like, oh, I have this huge problem, if I tell myself, but this, you can do this, and just make that little first step, then you could build on that. And I appreciate both those things, the reframing and then just taking that small step. Very helpful.
Very helpful.
I can't help but wonder if we don't always give ourselves permission to just take that one step. We feel sometimes driven, obligated, responsible. I have to solve all of this now, when it may very well be in your power to say, no, I give myself permission to just do this one thing today or this week, and the rest of it'll be waiting for me. I'll get to it. So is that a permission giving thing for ourselves?
I definitely think it is that permission giving thing. And it might also be a different way to do things. You might have always been someone that could have a list of 10 things in a day and you would get through all of them, and that would have made you feel successful in the past. Yet, do you need to really nurture yourself and give yourself that permission to go a little bit slower through this process? Yeah.
Makes sense.
And what I like is also the fact that when we try to gain a new perspective on things, and the usage, like we talked about, even a different word can be a huge help. But also, what else? So we reframe. Any other approaches that you will suggest, Angela?
When I also think about, I'm a big journaler, so I'm going straight to techniques that talk to those parts of us that help strengthen that inner being, that inner coach that we all have within us. That you mentioned fear before as well, that sometimes it's about talking to those fears. You can do it just out loud. You can do it in a journal where you actually say hello to that fear and what is that fear trying to tell you, and getting that perspective once you've done it a few times. To actually talk to your fears through journal writing is quite an eye-opening process to understand where it's coming from, and is it something new? Is it something, and what memory is it bringing up? And to know that it's going to be okay, and to let your fear have a voice, and to use that coaching part of yourself that we've all got in there, that you can do this, you can get through this. That's you've grown through this process, and to be able to talk to yourself like that is something that we all have to strengthen, because we are very good at probably putting ourselves down, and it is about learning to take care of yourself. And especially through a crisis, you can be very sensitive in the beginning. You can be very you have to be very protective of your feelings. Other people might not understand what you're going through, but you do. You can learn to understand what you're going through and what you need in that moment as well.
And go ahead, Scott.
Well, one of the benefits that comes to mind for journaling, it seems to be a record of the events that take place in your life and how you respond to them and cope with them. I would think that you could go back through your journal and say, oh, I remember this crisis in 2019, and I made it through that. COVID in 2020 through today, whatever remains of it, I made it through that. Surely I can make it through this next one.
And you would find so many pearls of wisdom in what you've been through, and you would notice just by reading what you have written, wow, I have got through that, and this is what I used, and this is what I've learned about myself. And oh, I just want to hug that person writing that and let them know that everything is going to be okay and that they're going to get it through it. And so it's hard when you're in that crisis to see that, but hindsight is amazing.
Okay, that is wonderful. If we don't have any questions on this point about gaining a new perspective of your crisis, let's bring up the next one, which is look into your support system.
This is a very big one through a crisis. Even no matter what crisis you're going through, whether it be like mine was a natural disaster and it turned into a career crisis, but it can be any type of crisis. There's people that you have around you can either give you energy or they can bring you down. And so when we think about the support system you want in this moment, as I was mentioning, you can be very sensitive. You're going through the trauma of what has happened to you. You might notice that some people might drop off, that the people that you thought would be around you might not be able to, maybe they don't know how to help you through this crisis or be there and support you. Maybe it's bringing up their own fears and insecurities. Yet you'll have people that are by your side, and the ones that can just sit and listen or give you a hug when you need to, or ones that really are your cheerleaders through this, that it might be a small handful and that's okay, that you really do want people around you that lift you up and that do energize you and let you go through what you need to go through without pushing down maybe what you're feeling in that day, because it is ebbs and flows through a crisis. You can be feeling great one day, and then the next day you might need to really take a lot of self-care. And what I noticed when I was going through my career crisis was that the people that I was surrounded by in a job that I no longer wanted to be in didn't really understand. And I knew that by opening up to them, it was going to possibly give that part of me that I didn't want to. So what I'm thinking is, if they said, oh, why would you move to another job? And they would put all their fears onto me. That might have halted my progression and my positive outlook and my focus on where I wanted to go. So I really kept it to, I'm just going to give them a little bit of information, but not too much, until I'm ready to be able to let their opinions and fears go. So when I think about being really precious with who you talk to in your crisis, that keep it to the people that you know are going to support you through that. And a coach is a really great place to be working with, and I mentioned a professional if you're still going through that pain, because to have that accountability and to have someone focusing on you is such an amazing thing, that to have that support system. And I'm even thinking social media as well, that there's lots of things that can bring you down on that. I had to actually go off social media for a little while to re-strengthen a part of me, because I had to make sure that my outlook was really positive. And sometimes I can find that social media can get you in those little traps of you might see something or you might hear something that's not aligned with who you are or who you want to be. So coming back, I've had to really go through my feeds and make sure that they are positive, uplifting, I'm following the right people, and that I'm getting that support also through social media as well.
What do you do if you don't have support system?
Good question.
Yeah. So you can really feel alone in this. I often was thinking that sometimes, who else has been through this that I can talk to that has also been through what I've been through? And you can feel quite alone, like no one will understand you. Yet I'm sure that there are ways that you can begin to open yourself up to networking. When I think of particular groups in our area, there are ones that are now connected with natural disasters. And even when I think of finding that tribe, it is about opening yourself up in little moments where you feel safe to talk to new people, to step outside, to find an interest as well, because you might not always want to talk about the crisis that you're in. You might want to talk about other things. So finding a new interest, what's something that you can do that will possibly have new people around you that maybe don't know your past, that you don't have to always talk about what has been happening in your life, but who you are now and who you want to be. So creating a new network, a new tribe around you, a new community. It may sound a bit daunting, yet if it's connected to your interests and what you're engaged in, that can be a really great step to take.
Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I would think that that social media and the internet in general is a fabulous tool for finding resources that we didn't have, 20 years ago. But as you said earlier, you do open yourself up to the possibility of maybe some negativity along the way, trying to explore those resources, right?
Right. What I want, that's a great, excellent question, because yes, sometimes when we open ourselves up, of course, we will run onto negativity and criticism and judgment. But again, what I want to bring up is, at one point I was in a situation, not because of the natural disaster, but kind of a human disaster in my life. But what I remember, how a person from whom I did not expect help, brought me a book that had a title, "What Color is Your Parachute?" And imagine I'm below everything possibly I could imagine. And he gives me that book, and I thought, what an insult. What parachute are you talking about? I need a job. I need a home. I need money to support my family. And he brings me this huge book. What color is your parachute? But what the book was about is, when in the middle of the crisis, when everything is absolutely ruined, to go back in your memory and like what you talked about, go back to yourself. And what he says, who did you want to be when you were little? And I thought, oh, that is not helpful. But when you remember, I suddenly started thinking, oh, I wanted to be this and I wanted to be that. That brought the whole new layer of contacts and connections in my life that I did not think about when I thought only of a crisis. But when I started thinking, oh, I wanted to read more, I wanted to write, I wanted to travel, I wanted to be an actress, and whatever, and suddenly I started feeling lightness in me, that I had a dream. I had a dream, and I always wanted to be around people like this. And so that opened up new doors. And so that's what I encourage our audience today. If you feel down and you don't know how to reach out, it doesn't matter what platforms or connections you use, but start dreaming, start remembering who you were, and also see that there are new connections in your support system that you maybe never used. And if they are not, invite new people into that new support system, build it up. Is it correct way to say that?
I think that's a great way to say that. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
you summed it up
look
beautifully.
Oh, well, but four of us here on the screen, and I'm sure our audience, our people who follow us for 2 years, they look for ways how to cope with unexpected changes or unexpected tragedies. And of course, this world, as you mentioned, is full of that. And it's so fast pacing. It's like everything changes so fast. And the war in Europe, and when things hit you like this so heavily, it's tragedy, it's a trauma. And many of our people who follow us, and you yourself, and us, each of us on the right side of the screen, Candy and Scott and myself, we had traumas in our lives, but we are alive. And that's, I think, is a good encouragement that each person can get out of the crisis and find a new way to reframe, find your who you are, but also through the support system. So anything else you want to add about support system before we get to the last point today? Get creative. I'm so excited about that, how to get creative.
I'm happy to move on if everyone else is happy.
Okay, let's move to our last topic today, subtopic. Because our major topic was how to clean up the mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual mess and find yourself in and after the chaos of change. So let's talk about get creative. How do you get creative in the middle of chaos?
And when I used to think about getting creative, it was about getting out the paintbrush and maybe wearing an art smock. But creative doesn't have to be in that particular way. It can be get creative in what you're doing every day. It can be go for a walk in a different direction. Instead of going your usual direction, maybe take a different walk. Maybe it can be with journaling. There's lots of prompts and ideas out there. Maybe write in a different colored pen. That could just use a different part of your mind to begin to see things in that new perspective, create a new energy, maybe move what you're doing every day into a different room. If you're working from home, maybe you can work at a local park, or even just sitting outside. Getting creative can just be making those small little shifts to refresh your outlook on life. It can be quite big, it can be small, it can be, I'm a very much of a list and a mind map type person, that if I've got lots of things going on in my mind, I can create a list, I can dump it out into a journal, even just picking up a pencil and maybe what color is this feeling inside of me, and just doing a quick little jot of something to just get it out as well. When I think of careers in general, people haven't been very creative with their careers. It has always been possibly a process that they think is hard, or they think is quite boring. And when they work with me, they'll see that it can be about being curious and playful and fun and stepping out of your comfort zone enough to give you that exhilaration to move forward and go, oh, I get what you're talking about now, that life doesn't have to be the way that I've always lived it. And excited, I often think about people say, oh, you're a positive person and you're very energetic, even though what you've been through, I was still that person inside of me. I ended up falling back in love with photography and walking and nature. And I use that as a part of, if I'm going through this heaviness, how can I lighten up my day and get that balance? So yeah, photography for me was an amazing part to once again see a different perspective of what I was going through. I was taking pictures of the property and the trees and going, oh, wow, look at the roots of that tree. That's a very different perspective than seeing it as devastation. And so and chasing sunsets and sunrises, that for me became a bit of a thing through the darkest times and the heaviest times. So being creative is about stepping outside of your comfort zone and doing things that light you up. And as you said, Lydia, what did you like doing when you were little? And going for bike rides and doing things like that, you get that feeling of, you get the lightness back into that. The world isn't a hard, heavy, down place, that there is joy to be found in the smallest of things.
Yeah, but don't we fight that?
Yes.
Don't we fight that, because we want to go back to our comfort. We want to go back where we know everything, but it is swept from underneath of our feet. Where do we go? But instead of looking back with nostalgia, right? It's hard. It's a trauma. But then start looking forward, little by little, day after day, right? And then finding that hope and joy and promise, like what you said, and get creative. I love that. Get creative. Wow.
I think we limit ourselves so often because we're used to doing things the way we do things. And that is such a terrible trap to fall into, because you really do need to be able to just look at things a little bit differently, just not be so set in our ways. And you can look at me and know that I'm old enough, I'm fairly set in my ways. But I think we don't want to limit ourselves. We do want to be able to maybe take a different view of something and know that that's okay. That's what we need to do sometimes. Yeah, I think that's probably where I struggle most. Probably.
And I'm just even thinking, for me, I'd never thought I was a good cook, and then I began to try new recipes, because that for me was a way that I could get creative in a totally different way and go, I want to be around my family and even bring them in. And so trying different recipes was a way for me to be creative through that process as well. And then enjoying the food on the other end.
So what else do you suggest people can learn in the midst of their crisis?
Yeah, in the midst of their crisis, and I keep coming back to that point that you said at the sort of towards the beginning, Lydia, that if you're not sure who you are through all of this, that to really open yourself up to finding that out, because I wonder if that is a limiting belief, that maybe you hadn't known exactly who you were before, and what do you need to be able to do to open yourself up to that part of you that we often sometimes don't go deep about. And that's what I find, that for me, I like to go deep about the crisis and who you are, and pull all of those parts out to find meaning and purpose, and that new chapter that's really going to resonate with who you are now. And it can be about diving quite deep and pulling out those little gems that you've possibly hidden for quite a long time, and giving yourself that freedom to be able to talk about that as well, and let that free, let that go in your journal, and discover who it is that you want to be now without any restrictions, and to dream big, as you were saying. Yeah.
That's perfect. Thank you. I brought up on the screen your book.
Yes, Career Crisis.
Because definitely out of your chaos and crisis and disaster that happened to you and your family, from these ruins, you built yourself up. You also always run to help those people who are in a similar circumstances. You also wrote a book. So
Yes.
could you share a little before we complete our conversation today about your book and ask people how can they find you?
So you're on my website at the moment, careerdesignstudio.com.au. They can find me here. I've got a free discovery session. If anyone is feeling like they want to talk about whatever is resonating with you or coming up today, my book is a transformational journey that I went through and a proactive guide for yourself to follow the steps, the process that I went to begin to uncover those parts of you. I found that since what I went through, that I really didn't want to sit there and read a book that took 10 hours. So this one is a quite easy read, and it's about you doing the steps to uncover that part of yourself, that I give you enough of my story to then dive into your story. And you can even write those little gems and those techniques that I give in my book. You've actually got space to write in the book as well. So I often say the hard copy is a great one because you can write in it. And for those that are overseas, Amazon, it's also available on Amazon so that you don't have to get the cost of sending it from Australia. The Amazon's a great choice for overseas people. Unless you want me to sign it, then we can do that as well. So my book is that proactive guide that will get you unstuck, that will help clear that mess that you're feeling and begin to lighten the mind, lighten the body, and get you focused on, well, where do you want to move into? What's this new chapter going to look like? And you can dream quite big in here and really finally, once and for all, uncover and discover that meaning and purpose in your life after this change.
And I like this positive attitude and mood that you created today. And thank you, Angela, for that. Because I think what kills our spirit, don't you think, Angel Scott? Thank you, because you are a very courageous person, very brave, and to rebuild in your not just yourself but also your narrative. And instead of repeating the pattern another time, which in your case, it was not you who created this chaos, but in our lives, in human lives, we create sometimes our own chaos. And then, of course, that does not help because we start blaming ourselves. And that digs us down even more and more and covers with all this life debris that we lost. But what I hear, be positive, be creative, also look around, build connections. And so with all these wonderful subtitles that we covered today, understand the mess you're in. And I invite our audience to go back to the video and go through those subtitles, gain a new perspective of your crisis. Look into your support system and get creative. And of course, get with Angela. Ask for help. Ask for her. I just recommend all people to know you better, to connect with you, to write to you, to buy your book. Thank you so much. In the end, what will you wish to our audience?
That's a good way to sum it up. So I wish that from what we've spoken about today, that they do feel a little bit lighter just by talking about it, that knowing that you're not alone, you're not going through this just by yourself, that there is a way to move forward, that we don't have to feel lost and stuck and in this big mess for any longer than that you need to. So reach out and even just to say hi and follow my I guess my journey as well, if you want to know more about that, to know that there is a way that you can move through this, and that this moment in your life it doesn't define what you have to be for the rest of your life. You can use this as that catapult into, well, where do you want to go from here? How can you use this as that upward trajectory into your new chapter? So I hope that everyone has that sense now that they can move forward from where they've been.
Wonderful. And I hope, yeah, go ahead, Scott.
That was Candy, actually.
And actually, I was just saying that's wonderful. I love the message you're ending with, Angela. Thank you so much. That's very uplifting and I think very helpful to hear. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you, everybody who watched us today. Be sure and still feel free to contact Angela, contact us. We are Coping Live Talk. We go live every Saturday, and every time we talk about coping with sudden life changes, but with a different guest. And so every guest has different experience, different approach, and that's why I think our coping live talk is growing and bringing more people. Thank you so much, Angela. I know that it is a different time zone, and so here it will be evening, and in your case, it was very early. Thank you for making an effort to get with us today live. And so I will show on the screen briefly the book that we talked about. So that's a book, and it's available on the website that you introduced us to. So thank you so much, and we hope that maybe we can see you again one day. Have a wonderful day, and Scott and Candy, have a wonderful evening.
All right.
I hope
Thank
to see
you.
you all next Saturday.
Okay.
You see, we
Thanks.
got out
Thanks for having
prices.
me.
We had a rough beginning, but we got out with these prices. Thank
We
you so
did.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angela.
Bye now.
Bye.